Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I am your host, Brian Martinez, and we are on Fireside Chat number 86. I am here with our very special guest, Orwell and Goode. He is another internet doge. It's good to meet other doges online, other Shibas. So, hey, Orwell, how you doing? This is the third one I've had on. I had on Rags a while back, and there's some others that I want to get on the show. So as soon as we get all the dogs together, we had a full pack.
Yeah, Shiba nationalism now. Yeah, I've tried to get hold of Rags for my personal show as well, but he seems to have, since his Twitter account got banned, I haven't really seen him much
He,
about. So,
yeah, he can be a bit elusive sometimes. But yeah, I used to get him on all the time though.
yeah, so the Shiba really is a spirit animal then.
It is, and they're also very strong-willed, and they do whatever they want. That's one of the things I like about them. They are. They actually are the one of the more difficult dogs to train because they're so independent. Strong, independent Shiba don't need no owner. That's what I'm saying.
I know, which is why they're pretty much most of them. Well, they're probably about 50% of the dogs that account for all these internet sensations and viral videos.
Yes. So, guys, hello, and this is Orwell and Goode. Like I said, you are basically what I call it a Twitter archiver, but there's also some shit posting that goes in there too, right? Would that be accurate?
Well, I haven't really been the best of archivers because I don't really keep threads or do hashtags or moments or anything like that. But that's probably accurate. I mean, I just use Twitter because it's fun. And also, it can be quite depressing and blackpilling sometimes because, you trawl through all these articles and there's just like 5 to 10 new things every day, which just makes you lose the will to live slightly more every single day. But um, but yeah, it doesn't. I do live streams as well on my YouTube channel, and I also run a Facebook and Gab account. Just try to show people that there is a lot of insanity out there, and I have better ways of finding it than others, and maybe just using my accounts as a way to pull them all together.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of traffic on your Gab? Is that pretty? Do you think that's growing?
Yeah, it's just over 5,000 followers. I don't use it as much as I used to. Sometimes if I'm bored or I've got nothing to do, I just post like spam post my account, just post loads of stuff at once, and it seems to get a bit of traction. But it's nowhere near as popular as Twitter or Facebook. And I think Twitter's probably the best place if you want to meet people on the right of center left or right of far left.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Facebook, you can get bigger audiences, but Facebook is probably a bit more ban happy than Twitter is. For example, iHypocrites had his accounts banned on Facebook a couple of times, and he doesn't really post anything overly offensive. I just
No.
think they're out to really get him. And
Most of the time, iHypocrite literally just shares screenshots or articles or videos that are already on Facebook or on the mainstream media. Like most of the time, he's just sharing what's out there. He's not actually adding commentary. So,
right, right, he doesn't. I know he's got a few positions himself because of his personal life, especially when it comes to single motherhood,
mm-hmm.
but that's about it. That's pretty much all the position he's really vocal about on
Yeah.
social media, which is a real shame that he gets axed so often for just basically sharing screenshots.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I knew you from Twitter, and I saw some shout outs you got on other people's channels. I believe, if I remember correctly, iHypocrite's done some because, you and him do similar style content, I think, like where it comes to just sort of putting together all of the crazy progressive culture war things that are happening. You just kind of share it out there. And then there's, I think Sargon did a shout out, and I think Eve Baring did one too at some point. So that's how I found you, was on Twitter. But you also have a Facebook presence. Do you? Which you were just talking a little bit about it, but which one of them do you think you're gonna have the most presence at? Is it Twitter?
Well, Twitter, because I kind of already made a name for myself on Twitter. But if I lost my Facebook account, I don't think I would be able to rebuild it as quick as Twitter.
Uh huh.
Because Facebook, I don't really devote that much effort to it. It's just basically there. If I've seen something really funny or just a meme that I haven't seen anywhere else, or if I've made a meme, then I'll just put it on Facebook as well. Plus, I have a few guys who also admins on my Facebook account. So just, it's just there ticking over, and I don't really pay that much attention to it. And I just use it to promote streams to do on YouTube as well. So I think I'll reach far more people on Twitter, to answer your question.
Okay. So let me ask you this: what made you get into doing that? What was like the what was your interest in this? What were you doing before you were making tweets on Twitter? What were you just watching this stuff unfolding from the outside?
Well, I, like most people, was a normie before doing this kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Um, uh, Thankfully, just to backtrack a bit, thankfully, I had two very loving conservative parents. So I was always skeptical towards political correctness, progressivism, mass migration. And I always had a bit more of a keenness towards traditional family values rather than modern family values. And, thanks to their side of the argument, I had a better overview of what was on offer, whereas some people today are just basically exposed to one side of the argument, and then the other side of the argument's just labeled bigoted, extremist, blah 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 blah. You can't even bear to look at these sides of the arguments. So this is why you have this phenomenon where people just throw these huge tantrums whenever, say, somebody who's got milquetoast opinions just comes to speak on their campuses, because they can't bear to have they physically can't bear to see other viewpoints being discussed. So I was kind of lucky to have had that, and then I just got more and more skeptical of the fact that we had like the grooming gang crisis in the UK in 2014, and then there were a few terror attacks, and then we had the migrant crisis in autumn 2015. And that's when I started thinking, like, no, this is not a good idea. And I wasn't really political either. It was kind of like a de facto fence sitter, if you like. I was skeptical of the left, and I didn't really adopt any right-wing views because I didn't look into it. I didn't really know. It wasn't something that interested me. I wanted to just concern myself with doing my degree and having fun on the weekends. And then the Paris attack happened, and that's when the penny really started to drop, because whenever I'd be cruising through my timeline on Facebook, and this was under my normie personal account, basically like 95% of my acquaintances were just decrying Western foreign policy. They were decrying. I'm virulently anti-war now, but I wasn't. I was just like indifferent about it. I didn't really care. I wanted to be left alone. And they were just basically blaming anything other than Islam. They were blaming Western culture. They were blaming Western bigotry, intolerance. They were taking the side of Muslims. And it's like, what kind of mindset is this? What kind of pathology is this? Just go through all this mental gymnastics just to avoid addressing the root cause. Yeah, I agree that Western foreign policy has played a huge role in destabilizing these countries, and it's like kicking a hornet's nest and then opening all your windows by bombing the shit out of their countries and just opening your borders to these people and giving them welfare. So you might as well just like leave honey on the side. It's just a metaphor for the welfare programs that these people couldn't see.
Yeah.
And it's just,
except one thing, because I agree with you. Like the problems with the foreign policy and all that. But the difference is, what's happening is actually, it's not that you kicked a hornet's nest and left all your doors and windows open. It's that you kicked a hornet's nest and then you went into your tower that's got, bulletproof windows and screens so they can't get in, but you opened the windows and doors to everyone else that lives in the building. Like basically the people that are suffering, that have to deal with this, to put it more accurately, are not the people that made the decisions, right? They're just the citizenry. They're just the common folk that probably the majority of them feel as you do, that we shouldn't be, intervening, that we shouldn't have been doing this stuff, but they're the ones that actually pay the price. The people who make these decisions, they don't.
Exactly. That's probably a fairer assessment, because it's the general public didn't really want to go in there just for another pointless war. I think that they're getting very, very annoyed with throwing trillions of pounds or dollars down this black hole, which is the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, and I make that point because that's the argument that usually comes from the people that are crying that we should be more tolerant, the people who want to let them in, the leftists that basically are for this, they're the ones that say, well, it's our fault that this happened. It's the West's fault for making this. And so it's sort of like, so are you saying that because our governments did things that nobody really wanted, the citizens should suffer? Because they don't have anything to do with
Exactly.
it, right? So, it kind of has to be put in perspective. The people who are making this argument, they're ultimately saying that common people who live in the West should suffer for the decisions made by the elites that they don't have to suffer the consequences.
Exactly, exactly. And then they'll just call you a horrible person for noticing that there are consequences.
Yes.
They've kind of like created this alternate sort of moral framework where they can chide you if you break their moral codes, i.e., by saying something that they'll consider racist or xenophobic or bigoted or whatever, and you come off looking like a horrible person when when your armaments are activated, so to speak, and you're trying to sound the alarm. But opening your borders to millions of people of fighting age who do not share your culture, language, heritage, religion, or values, and for them just to come into your country willy nilly is not a bad idea, not a good idea. And you have people who've probably never ever been to a third world country in their lives, never ever read the Quran, never ever read any Islamic religious texts or had any interactions with non-integrated Muslims, and these are the kinds of people who will be basically trying to get you ostracized and fired from your jobs for saying, "Hang on, this isn't a really good idea."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's really what got me down this channel. I started looking at people like Paul Joseph Watson, Sargon McCard, and then eventually moved on to Molyneux and other content creators from there. I mean, you have those two, which are pretty much like the gateway
Yeah.
YouTubers, so to speak,
PJW and who else? The Gateway?
and Sargon.
And
And
Sargon. Okay, yeah, sure.
you've got like Undoomed, Bearing, and all those kinds of people, and Kraut before he went off the deep end as well.
Yeah. So of all the you talk about a lot of stuff on your Twitter, you share a lot of different things. Do you have like a choice, like issues that you care about the most? Like what would you say are some of the most important things in your opinion?
Oof. Um, well, I did kind of come from a libertarian background, so I'd say that our national debts are a big one because they're just unpayable. I've been a very staunch advocate of not welfare reform, but the eventual abolition of the welfare state because I think that it promotes disincentives. And I think that it's ultimately damaging to the fabric of society since people don't need to turn to their neighbors, friends, or families for help or sustenance when bad times come, but they can turn to the state. And I also think that it's also been one of the accelerants towards the demise of the nuclear family in Western countries. Of course, you've
Ah,
got feminism and women's liberation, which is the fire, but the welfare state has definitely been an accelerant towards that process, which, in my opinion, has been absolutely catastrophic to the Western world. And now that you have all these huge welfare programs, have sort of like birth rates which are an existential threat because well, they're very very low, and then you don't have enough people who are going to be able to continue to pay for these social programs, especially as life expectancies increase, and you have a growing retired population, but you don't
mm-hmm.
have the kids who will work in order to pay taxes to keep that program going. So the general prescription is to just import people from the third world to carry on paying for it when we know that's not quite the case.
Isn't that the reverse? They kind of come in and they end up draining from it.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And it's not just in Europe where that's the problem. You have the same phenomenon in America as well.
Absolutely.
It's gone to the point that I know that the 1965 Immigration Act has become a pretty exhausted meme at this stage, but at the moment, legal immigration is a net loss per capita in America.
Mm-hmm.
Not just illegal, but legal immigration is also now a net loss. So, I mean, there is something to be said there about building a wall, or at least being a lot stricter in who you let into your country.
Wow. I never thought I'd hear so much racism in one of our fireside chats. And
I'm sorry to
sexism.
lower the tone.
So we were talking a little bit before the stream started, and I was telling you that your content is not specifically related to men's rights, or at least it wouldn't appear to be on its surface. Although I do think that there is a strong relationship between the issues facing men and all of the global economic, cultural problems that we're having, especially in the West. I think there's a strong case to be made as to how those things are related. But when I asked you if you knew who we were, and you said you'd heard of the Honey Badgers as like we have a focus on men's issues, and that is the main focus of our channel. Although in order to advocate for men's issues, you have to advocate for other things related to, in order to basically move on to that. So we have to be free speech advocates, for example. That's probably one of the most important issues for me is free speech, and specifically, I'm a free speech absolutist, but I don't know if I'm the only one at HBR that feels that way. The opinions of Brian Martinez are not necessarily the opinions of everyone at Honey Badger Radio, for the record, but that is my feeling on it. Because we do talk about other things, it's one of the reasons why I got you on, other than the fact that, to be honest, there were people that were our patrons that were like, hey, there's another Doge on Twitter, you should get him on. And I was like, okay, So you were going to ask me some questions about Honey Badger Radio. I thought maybe we can let you do that, and maybe it'll turn into a discussion or something.
Yeah, sure. What do you say would your ultimate ends be? Would it be more of a progressive and gradual kind of thing, whereas you have like kind of small doable goals which you would try to keep getting? Because we know that politics, culture, and society is never static. It's always dynamic.
Yeah.
And the left have got that down to a T. I mean, they're pretty much Trotskyites insofar as their politics is not for the revolution to just occur and then they afterwards try to preserve what they've revolted for, but it's just to have a continual revolution so society is never stable. Would you kind of be like to counteract this, but for maybe the insanity that's put forward by feminists and where the culture seems to be going, which is it's intolerant, it's intolerably anti-men at this stage. Do you think that you have a set goal and then try to conserve it from there, or do you think you'll try to just be there to kind of be like counter-revolutionaries towards the left's plans?
Well, there's a few things. I guess, again, I can only speak for myself for sure, but here's some of the stuff that I'm thinking about. One, men's issues is probably, it's sort of like it's sort of like libertarianism and capitalism in that it is something that actually legitimately hasn't been tried. Like absolute free market, absolute, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not like this, this is, men's issues is truly progressive. Like, it hasn't actually been tried, right? It hasn't actually been looked at. Let me put it that way. At least not since Rome, and Greece, where we would actually treat men's value as inherent on the same level as women, and also treated women's value as something that should be earned on the same level that we do with men today. So there is a large disparity there in our current state, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we live so comfortably and people have the ability to complain about things that are actually very, very trivial, and we're not struggling, right? So one is that we're trying to get across the idea that this is a very, it's a very progressive concept on the one hand. Secondly, men's issues are not there. I don't like to say men's rights. I know that that's what that's the acronym, right? MRA. But the thing about that is when I look at the definition of rights, there isn't a lot there that you can look at. There are some things like circumcision is one that should be, I think that we should be challenging that at the very least. and another one would be conscription, which, you know, those are two things in which case men do not have the right to their, you know, bodily autonomy, right? But for the most part, we're not looking for things that expand the state. We're looking for things that free men from the state. We're looking for things that are more, again, you know, freedom oriented, liberating for men, like getting them out of that system. But it cannot be done on a legislative front. It has to be done in a cultural way. So we're looking at the culture. Now, the other thing that's very important, actually, we can't even begin talking about men's issues unless we do this first, is we have to defeat feminism. And it has to be defeated in academically, culturally, and even in some sort of a way that it's very unappealing to women as well as white knights. So you have to beat it. And the thing is, it's like you were saying, the feminists have been very good at maintaining the need for more feminism, the need for it to be more relevant. There was just an article that went up yesterday that I'm going to talk about tomorrow on the news show that was basically saying, so it's Father's Day and we need more feminism. That, like, what was something like, it's Father's Day and there's this toxic masculinity thing. So what do we do? Well, we need to give fathers more feminism. It's like, no, this is actually the cause of the problem. You know, the problem is that feminism as an ideology, it has to be destroyed. And I personally believe, and I've seen a lot of evidence to support it, that almost all, if not all, of the destructive identity politics leftist doctrines, whatever front they're doing, whether it's intersectional feminism, the body positive, the Black Lives Matter, the whatever it is, it all goes back to feminism. Feminism is actually at the root of everything. And it's because even the Marxist stuff, feminism is more useful than all of those things, because as long as you can use women as a class, you can get the public to do anything you want, as long as you manage to get the point across that women have it worse. They either have it worse now, or they have it worse in this country, or they have it worse in that other country, or they used to have it bad in the past, or whatever. As long as you can, like, keep that narrative alive that women were oppressed, are a minority, and all these other things that are absolutely false, then you can get the average person to submit to feminism every time. And the reason is because the opposite is true. It's because people care about women probably too much, you know? And we have to break that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I will just to add a couple of things. Mainly, I want to try to change the culture so that women are put in a position where they have to earn their value to some extent, and men are given some value without having to earn it. Some is what I'm saying. Like, this isn't about everything. Think of like Jordan B. Peterson. I was just talking to Allison about this. She was asking me why is Jordan B. Peterson so appealing? And I was explaining that he is basically, his audience, which is mostly men, they are people who have not heard an encouraging word for the larger part of their life, and they don't know why they are bothering to be here. They are consumed by the nihilism that the academics put out, and in all these other, you know, sort of, as Peterson describes, you know, postmodern neo-Marxist types.
The radical ideologues.
Yeah, the radical types. And they're you know, they're not getting a sense of meaning in their life, and he gives it to them. But he's not saying anything that isn't that would be considered to be all that revolutionary if you grew up with a father that was in your life and, you know, taught you these things, right? He's filling that void. And this is what men are responding to. And it's turning them around in a big way. Like, there are people who have been like, oh, I almost joined the alt-right, which is, the alt-right simply is another response to a feminist culture. It's just a bunch of men looking for an identity, and they're not getting it from the people, you know, for being an ally, because their allies don't get it. You know, feminist men, they end up getting the worst of it. I think there's a reason why they always get accused of, you know, sexual harassment or sexual assault. It's partly because of their male feminism and their white knighting, and it's partly because of their proximity to feminists, and that these people are more likely to accuse them of things. And all of it is tied to the male identity itself, which is in a lot of danger. And we want to, and, you know, Jordan Peterson, like I said, you know, he gives men that sense of your identity matters, you have value as a human being. But on the other hand, and this is not paradoxical at all, you also will get more meaning from your life if you know that you are responsible for something. Men want that. They want to make the world a better place. Men want to do it. But they have to feel like there's a purpose to it, right? And they're not, I think that they don't get that. They don't think that their existence here matters. It's more of that nihilism that comes out of that postmodern neo-Marxist stuff, you know, that nothing matters. So there's no such thing as right and wrong. There's no such thing as good and evil. There's no such thing as gender. There's no such thing as masculine or feminine. There's, you know, that none of these things matter. And of course, you're going to get the kind of men that are thirsting for this sense of meaning, because that's what men want to do. So these are the things that I think are really important. These are the things that I think we're talking about and we're focusing on, and we're trying to save as many men as we can, because feminism is not going to do it. So
no. Of course not. Well, I think the sole purpose of feminism was to just atomize Western society, and the damage, the cultural, social, economic damage that feminism has done has been it's immeasurable. It's absolutely immeasurable. I mean, Marx and Lenin both agreed that one of the things that you need to do, and I mean, there's always conjecture about who wrote most of the Communist Manifesto. Some people suggest that Engels could have been responsible for most of it, but if you look at the pillars,
I could see that. I could see Marx saying, you know, I shouldn't be doing this much labor.
Well, if you look at his life, then yeah, I mean, Engels,
he's a lazy bastard.
Engels, despite his political positions, was a remarkably erudite man. He could read in more than 24 languages. He wrote incredible volume of work.
Yeah.
But anyway, it goes back as far as the sort of the very early radical leftist thinkers, that one of the things you need to do to bring about a communist or a revolutionary socialist society was to disband the nuclear family. And it's a very important tool in order to do so, to reach your political goals. If you're revolutionary, you want to have discord. You need to sow discord within the society. You need to have people to be unbound to traditions, to parents, and basically unbound to any sentimentality. It really is it's unforgivable what these people have done. And do you mind if I quickly unpack something which I talk about on my show quite a bit about women's liberation in particular and the dissolution of the nuclear family?
Yeah, do it. That's fine. That's fine.
Well, if you break apart the nuclear family, and what's the divorce rate nowadays? It's around 50%.
At least 50%. Like I think in the West, American white families, it's like 50%. And then in like when you get into minority groups, the divorce rate is higher, but that's only where in the places where there's a marriage that takes place at all. Most of the time, kids are just born without fathers, and there's not even a marriage that happens in minority cultures in the United States. So,
right. Okay, so one of the big problems has been the population growth. In America's case, that is, population's fallen by more than twice its size in about 50 years, which obviously is going to add pressures to housing prices. They're going to go upwards and wages are going to go downwards. And now that you've kind of unshackled women from traditional gender roles, that, you know, traditionally speaking, the man would be the breadwinner and the woman would be the nester. She would raise the children, make sure the home was nice and tidy and all that. So now, instead of having the traditional nuclear family structure, you have women in the workforce, and they're basically told to emulate a kind of maybe semi-masculine man, because now men aren't really men. let's be frank. I mean, most men you see nowadays working in an office cubicle are pretty defeated. They have a paunch, they're soft-bodied, uncalloused hands. They're probably physically quite weak and have lower testosterone levels than they
Well,
did
yes,
years.
actually we do. We have lower testosterone levels than we did over every generation. Our levels are lower, and it's not just ours. Looks like our playback got interrupted. We can keep going though. It's not just ours. Women's also has gone down.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know
Yeah,
about the women one,
yeah,
but
and we both genders have higher estrogen levels too.
ah, well, estrogen, high estrogen levels is sometimes linked to emotional volatility and a proneness to violence.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
It
It
can.
is. It is. That's. I'm glad you. I'm glad that you said that because we talked about that. The whole toxic masculinity thing and all of the stuff that is claimed to be going on is not due to testosterone levels. It's due to estrogen levels, and that's exactly right. That's exactly right. In the what's going on? My stream is not working. Hold on a second. You're still there, right?
Yeah, I'm still
So
here.
my internet's fine. It might be YouTube. Try if you're watching this, just try Twitch because we're on Twitch too. So if you're here and you're experiencing interruptions, go to Twitch and just go there because their YouTube is being weird. So anyway, but yeah, so it's definitely like I was saying before, it's estrogen levels that create that. In men have higher estrogen levels, women have higher estrogen levels than they used to. And I think that when you see all the gang violence that happens in the inner cities, it's actually mostly boys without fathers, with
Hmm.
lower testosterone and higher estrogen. Hence, they're more prone to violence. Hence, they're more prone to emotional outbursts. You know,
Hmm.
so that's what that's coming from. But I interrupt. I apologize. Go on.
That's fine. That was something I didn't know. You learn something new every day. The other thing that we need to consider is that this will also have a depressionary effect on wage rates because you now have women competing against men for salaried positions. And also, there has to be this creation of all these spurious jobs, such as human resources, bureaucratic jobs, regulatory and compliance, and all these are pretty much parasitical jobs that hamper economic productivity. Because instead of reinvesting, say for a company, instead of being able to reinvest some funds into a new investment or research and development, something like that, you have to now employ somebody to be HR, which makes a lot of the time it makes the work environment into a pretty hostile place. Everyone's treading on eggshells so they don't offend that one diversity hire, right?
Yep. Yep.
And then you have regulatory and compliance, which drives up costs for economic productivity. And then you have bureaucracy, which, well, tax rates are going to have to go up in order to pay for these people. And then, of course, you need more tax collectors in order to pay for the bureaucratic overheads and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing is that house prices go up as well. So salaries go down, house prices go up because now instead of people living together in a family structure, you have now women living apart, and a lot of the times they're told to pursue a career, to ride the cock carousel, just to be a hedonist until they're 35 before they think about settling down with a 10 out of 10 guy who's 5 years her junior, and she's got a six-figure salary. You know the meme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we know that women are hypergamous. There's like that 80-20 Pareto principle, especially places like Tinder. I hear that 20% of the guys get 80% of the girls on Tinder. And I think you have a similar situation in
Yep.
in the dating pool as well. So that must also contribute towards our falling birth rates in Western countries. So that's the economic side. So just fracturing the nuclear family has been one of the reasons why, despite technological and economic advancements, people seem to be poorer and less able to afford things than they used to be, say, 60 years ago during, say, like the 50s, which is, it's kind of portrayed as the golden age of like the American dream and the nuclear family.
Yes. And also, here's something else I was going to mention because we were talking about this before. This idea of breaking up the nuclear family as an effective tool for communists basically is really quite simple. If you take the father out of the equation, then it's much easier to replace the father with the state. And that is the idea,
Absolutely.
right? So you replace the father with the state, and that's exactly what's happening. Or in the case of other sort of, I think there were other communist causes that were doing the same thing. Oh yeah, right. They do it with why did they make religion or illegal in a lot of these communist countries like Maoist China and
Hmm.
Soviet Russia? Because they wanted to replace God with the state as well. So if you can replace God and the Father with the state, then it's a lot easier to institute it. And of course, the Gibbs, the Gibbs works very well. And what you end up doing is, and this is what's happening now as well, is in these sort of environments where feminism has run amok and there are so many people being raised mostly by the state as well, because even though the father's taken out of the picture, it doesn't necessarily mean that the mother is raising the children for the entire time. Most of it is actually going to be spent in education systems where they actually get their, where they get their ideas, where they get raised. Why then? Why wouldn't you have daycare centers as early as, I want to say, less than a year old for many children, and then they go right from daycare, which is mostly operated by feminist women, and they go
Hmm.
right from that into Head Start, which is their early pre-kindergarten is what we call it, preschool, I guess you could say, and then kindergarten, and then elementary, and then high school, and then university, which of course they're trying to get more and more people into without having to worry about them qualifying first or anything. And by the time they're done, you've just produced an entire generation of social justice warriors that were not raised by their parents. You know,
What was it? What was it the Jesuits said? If you give the boy until the age of 7, I'll produce you the man.
yeah,
Something like that. And this is the kind of thing that they're doing, because you hit the nail on the head there, that they're trying to institute like these daycare centers which begin earlier and earlier, which are usually run by childless single women, let's be honest.
uh huh,
And what are the
absolutely,
political orientations of childless single women? Because they would have been brought up in a very similar milieu. And we know that a lot of people's beliefs are inherited. There's a very interesting study which found that characteristics such as individualism and freedom of speech, there seems to be some form of hereditarianism involved. And if you don't believe in that, there's obviously going to be a role to play in, say, a two-parent household who will teach their kids certain values and standards. And I would be willing to wager that a lot of the people being brought up in these households and without father figure present will often try to emulate what is often their mother, how their mother brought them up.
uh huh,
So, for example, these people in daycare centers who would rather eschew starting a family in their 20s and say, well, I'll just wait till I'm 35 or something. I'll just have a job until then. I'll just enjoy life, go traveling, etc. These are the kind of women who are in daycare centers, and they will have that kind of philosophy, this live and let live sort of libertine philosophy. And this is the kind of thing that these kids will be brought up in. And this is one of the things that I try to stress, that if you're for limited government, if you're for, say, a freer economy, if you're for lower taxes and all that kind of stuff, then one of the things you should be advocating for is trying to rebuild the nuclear family structure on a societal basis, which means these people who work in these daycare centers are going to be out of a job, but they're going to be doing something more meaningful, i.e., raising a family of their own, rather than working a job, which, I mean, the salary isn't going to be all that great in daycare center. And what are they going to do there?
yeah,
Unfortunately, now moving on to schooling, there was a study in the UK. I think it was a poll in the UK at the last election, so the 2017 general election, which Theresa May marginally won. I think it's something like 80% of all teachers who answered this poll voted for Labour, then like another 10% voted for the Liberal Democrats. So
yeah, of course. Oh, the liberal Democrats. All right. Yeah, of course, of course. Wow, you guys got it worse than us. See, in the states, I believe the study was conducted. It's like something like 85% of all college professors. So we only know about college professors.
Ivy League,
Are
yeah, it was
yeah,
84% of Ivy League professors. I remember that.
yeah, and they're all like far left, sort of socialist types, and then the remaining are either middle of the road or right wing, which at least they're not, still far left. So, but it's still a worrying imbalance. I just got word from Wizard of Cause that YouTube is just down. So YouTube is down. Press F to pay respects. R.I.P. in pepperoni YouTube. Sorry. But we're on Twitch, so it doesn't really matter. We're here, and we're not gonna go anywhere. I don't rely on YouTube for the stream. So, okay. One of the other things that I was just thinking about is also related to what you were saying, is the number of teachers. This is where the men's thing comes in, by the way. Because, I mean, as an aside, the number of teachers, female teachers, that are essentially raping their students, right? And that's also something that should be concerning, because these are women that don't have children most of the time, because they have their children in their classroom. They are the mothers of those kids, and they actually treat it that way. I've had female teachers that considered her students as though they were her own children, and it is kind of what's happening. And when you consider that, the only factor that's made all of this happen, this snowball effect, is taking the fathers out. Because putting a father in the home, making that a priority for our society, is to have fathers in the home of their children, while at the same time, and this is very important, holding women accountable for the kind of men that they choose. This is a bit complex, but it's important. Like, I watch Free Domain Radio too, right? Mm-hmm. And he's had lots of female guests that call in, and they're women that talk about the bad husbands they have that are not around for their kids or whatever, or the callers that call in that talk about their abusive fathers or abusive stepfathers. And then Steph will say, well, what about their mom? What about the mom? She chose him, right? She allowed all of this to go on. You know, she was sort of because the kids these people want to erase the woman's responsibility. That's my point. Like, in every conceivable circumstance, they don't want to look at the ways in which their mother contributes to the problem. If they have an abusive stepdad, which I know that there's a high likelihood of that, or if they have a father that beats them sometimes. And it's also worth pointing out, mothers are far more likely to hit their kids than the fathers are. That's a statistical fact. And anecdotally, in my own home, my mother was the one that would beat us whenever we acted up. And she would do it very frequently. And my father hated the idea of doing it. I remember he did it once, and he had to go and have a cry afterward because he didn't want to do that again. And, he's not a pussy. Like, he was an athletic guy, played a lot of ball and, all that. But so we have to, get to a place where women are being, they have to understand their responsibility when they choose to start a family with someone, that they're going to be the right person. But in order for that to happen, they have to know what the right kind of man looks like. So we need fathers back in the home. And if women change their standards, like if they basically say, okay, I'm not just going to go for the alpha guy that makes my panties wet, but I'm going to look for someone that's actually going to give me, a stable home and a good family, men will change. Because that's just the fact about men. Men's behavior changes depending on what women are asking for. And it's something that I wish, wasn't that true, but it is true. So this is I think the way in which it's related. And once you have a father back in the home, everything else will start to fall into place. The kids grow up more confident. They don't need the state as much. They will become self-assured, and the state will shrink, because that's what they're going to want to see voted in policy. They're going to want that. They're going to, you know what I'm saying? They're going to, it'll change everything.
Yeah, just a couple of things to add to that. I know that you really shouldn't judge people's ideas on their appearance, but look at the kind of men who are social justice warriors. They're either weedy guys who can't even bench press their own body weight, or they're very overweight and soft, which tells me that they have very low testosterone. Yeah. And I mean, there have been a couple of studies which found that people with higher testosterone favor capitalism over socialism. You have another study which determined, this was done to millionaires, that determined that millionaires with bigger bicep sizes favored less a redistributive state than weaker men, or men with smaller biceps. And there's been numerous kind of studies which have found, there's another one around the election, that low T men were far likelier to vote for Hillary Clinton. So, I mean, there's been quite a few of these things published out there, and it's no secret that low T men are far likely to be on the left than high T men. And there's also the argument when it comes to cerebral development and development of the amygdala, and of course, having a mother or a single mother, the chances are they're going to be far more overbearing and overprotective than a father. A father's going to want their son to kind of do things, have accidents, have experience, and learn from their surroundings, have that rough and tumble. I mean, there's so much you could talk about with this kind of field that you could probably go on all day. Like, the other thing is all these boys being put on ADHD medication, i.e. a drug which should be used for warehouse raves, not for 6-year-olds. But and the other thing I wanted to talk about, something you said earlier which slipped me, was trying to kind of give responsibility or respect women, but the respect needs to be earned.
Yes.
The other night, a friend and I, she's also a girl, we were looking at these pictures online of these black queer fat femmes. It's like fat femmes or queer femmes, and it's all these overweight women, and they have thousands of Instagram followers. Like that Ashley Shackelford woman has like 50,000 Instagram followers, and people just quote like answering to her posts. Like, you have all the women answering saying, "You're beautiful, babe. That looks amazing. Don't forget not to just look at pictures of fat femmes, but to pay them too, and like link their PayPal details below." It's like, you're literally paying this person just to, dig themselves an early grave. And it's this thing that, a lot of the time women don't really have to do much in order to get resources, in order to get status. All they have to do is be a woman. And I mean, the standards are pretty low a lot of the times, and they're non-existent for these kind of people, because they expect these vastly overweight women who just look like small vehicles to get resources for just being able to gorge and stuff their face and die at 50, which is really, really tragic. And I think this kind of goes to show to you maybe like a decline in aesthetic standards in our society. Yeah. Thanks to postmodernism, investing the arts, and this kind of like aesthetic relativism, which is kind of very pervasive, and the idea of body positivity. I saw a body positivity movement which has begun to glorify acne-covered skin.
I saw that too. Yeah, what's really hilarious about the body positivity movement being a part of this sort of communist Marxist stuff, and they've like literally come out and said, I think I saw an interview with Sargon of Akkad on Steven Crowder's show, and he talked about how he saw this button that said "riots, not diets," and he had to buy it. Yeah, and I had to laugh, and I was like, and basically apparently the shop that was selling the buttons had to close down because it was contributing to the capitalist Western capitalism, and they had a problem with that, and they wanted the communist utopia to come in. I don't know if these people are aware of what diets are going to be like once the communism comes in, but that body positivity thing that you like so much, it's on borrowed time, honey. So I got a couple super chats I should read through. If you guys have any super chats for Orwell and Goode and you want to ask him a question or just add a comment, please just send it through and I'll read it, provided YouTube is up. It seems like it's up right now, but I'm prepared for it to go down at any moment because it's YouTube. Jonathan Rossler gives us $5 and says, the alt-right almost sounds like a less violent version of gangs, at least from how I've heard you guys describe it. And Tyler Preston gives us $5 and says, for Orwell and Goode, have you ever heard of rational disconnect? Guy is like Destiny 2.0. Have you ever heard of rational disconnect?
I think I have. I remember seeing him quite a lot, just basically criticizing Sargon of Akkad on Twitter when he was still around on Twitter. But I don't know what he does. I kind of know what Omni Destiny did. It's kind of like from the memes, of course, like arguing for ethical CP and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I never really followed like the blood sports or the inception of the internet blood sports where Destiny was around, and I really just on YouTube I just have a few people who I watch, and I just tend to, without sounding like a dick, just I tend to read more and try to get my information from there because I'd much rather have a better foundation of knowledge before I go delving and looking into kind of like these certain content creators and forming my opinions of these people before. But I have seen him around, and I wouldn't have ever drawn the comparison to the two of them, to be honest, from my limited knowledge of what they both do.
Yeah. HMS Hood says feminists eat their own. You know, so I've seen some that look like they literally have. But
did you see that? Did you see that picture doing the rounds yesterday of this Labour supporter woman said, "I never kissed a Tory."
No, no. What?
A Tory, for those who don't know, is a derogatory term for conservative in Britain.
Yeah.
And it was this woman who, oh, honey, she must have been like 350, 400 pounds. And she's saying, "I never kissed a Tory." And the caption was, "Well, it looks like you ate a few of them."
That's great. That's good. So yeah, that's a good joke. So I wanted to talk about, oh yeah, right. So these guys, these sort of low T, SJW men, I think, honestly, I argue against them all the time. I've gotten into lots of fights with them, like not literal ones, but like online arguments, and they've been extremely vitriolic. But the thing is, I actually think they need us more than most other men. I think that they're the ones that we could actually save, to be honest. And I want to a degree. I want to help them because I know that the path they're on, the reason why they're so angry, the reason why they're so bitter, and the reason why they get so mad at guys like me is because I'm actually pretty happy. Like, I do a lot of complaining on, well, I wouldn't even call it complaining so much. I do a lot of, let's say, shining a light on all of the just bad things that are happening in the world, just everything that's going on politically, with feminism, with men, with, all of these issues. I try to bring attention to, and I can be passionate and I can be feisty, but to be honest though, I'm pretty happy in my life, and I'm actually really glad I know this stuff. And I think that it's been good for me on the whole. And I think that what I've noticed is the people that I argue with, they are genuinely unhappy people. Like you get into an argument with them, and they are pretty sure they have the moral high ground. And then you look at other activity though, and they're just like, I gotta go take my depressants. Oh, I'm drunk again. Oh, I'm high again. Like they're doing all this stuff to sort of unplug from reality. Oh, I need a weekend to play video games and zone out or whatever. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, see, you need help, man. Like, you need purpose. You need something to help you. And I want to do that for them. And I think that's one of the people we try to reach out to, like incels. They've been getting shit on a lot lately. And I think that it's very unfortunate because I don't think it's deserved. I think that incels are, just like these feminist men, they are a product of the very system that we're criticizing. If these men had fathers, and I guarantee you a lot of the male feminist types either don't have a father in their life, or the father they have is another male feminist that managed to like luck out, and I don't know, fuck somebody, and so and make a baby with them. And so like I think that those guys actually need it more than anything else. It seems strange because they might be people that wouldn't warrant my sympathy, but they get it. And I think incels are the same. I couldn't think of anybody, like when it comes to punching down, I couldn't think of anyone that would be like lower than punching down at incels. I mean, those guys, they have it. They don't even need anyone to make them feel suicidal. They probably do a lot of the time, right?
Right. And when it comes to kind of the male feminist type, like the white knights, well, I mean, how many of them are 6'2", 220-pound ripped guys?
None. Chads, you mean, right? Well, that's the thing about incels is that a lot of times incels are male feminists. They're angry at women because they're frustrated because the tactic of appealing to feminism isn't working for them. They're gynocentric as fuck. right?
Well, it's a time to reset the clock because it's almost like every week there's an article coming out from somewhere saying male feminist X accused of abusing women,
Yeah.
accused of raping women, accused of beating women. It's just like it's every single time. We know it's overcompensation and we know it's projection a lot of the time. The other thing that I wanted to say about male feminists is that since they themselves can't compete with more alpha males on a level playing field, they have to chide, they have to castigate, they have to bring down all men in order for them to have a chance in competing, which is why they do the kind of slimy thing and cozy up to women, say we're going to fight for your so-called rights that you already have, and we're going to do all these other things to destroy or dismantle toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
when in actual fact, by kind of metaphorically castrating men, they themselves stand a better opportunity to procreate. It's kind of like the will to life, but
It is. You
in
see,
a really, really perverted form.
yeah, you see that behavior play out in bonobo societies. They do that.
Yes,
Like
yes.
there are the alphas, and they get, they get the female, and then there are the nice guys, the incels, the betas or whatever, and they do favors, and occasionally the female bonobo will go and give him some ass, but basically it's a gamble, right? She has to sneak off to do it though, because otherwise the alpha will, fuck some shit up. So, but yeah, you do see that in a lot of, it's not like unique to humans, and I agree with that, and that's why I'm like, if I could, I try to help male feminists are not going to be sexually successful by and large with that tactic. The best thing for them to do is to become free thinking, non-dependent, non sort of non-reliant on female approval. They need to be those kinds of human beings, and they will be happy, and they will also attract women. Because when you don't care that much about women, then women become interested because they want to know why you don't care. They think there's something to it. They become interested in that.
Mm.
And it's almost like you don't have to try. That's the thing. Like, there's this misconception about what it means to be alpha. And I think that it's a misconception created by people who aren't alpha, that therefore they don't understand what it means. Do you know Adam Ruins Everything? Ever seen that?
I haven't. What happens?
Oh, Adam Ruins Everything is a series on that was part of College Humor, but I believe now it's on some, I don't know if it's cable or what, but it's on some other channel. I think it's called True TV or something like that. And this guy named Adam Conover, supposedly he breaks these myths about various things in our culture and society. So, for example, he's done one about how diamond rings are, they're not based on anything that actually has any real value, and they're, the diamonds themselves aren't worth much, right? For example, he did one about circumcision that I agree with, where he talks about, how circumcision is actually, it doesn't have the benefits that people have said. Like it doesn't protect you from STDs. It doesn't make sex better. It doesn't do these things. And in fact, that there's a lot of risks that come with it. And those are things that I'm for, but he's done way more content that I'm against. And one of them was he did this one about alpha and beta males. And he characterized alpha masculinity all wrong. All wrong. Because he made it all about aggression. He made it all about borderline bullying, insulting people, treating women like shit, And trying to control everyone around him. And he made this very caricatured version of it. And the thing is, that's not how alpha masculinity works. If you're around alphas, or if you are an alpha, you are not walking around telling everybody that you're an alpha. Alphas don't have to do that. They just attract people. They just have a natural, their personality is one that people are attracted to. Their ability to lead has nothing to do with them controlling or commanding other people or dominating them. Their ability to lead is also natural. People want to hear what they have to say because they have confidence. They mistake aggression for confidence, and they mistake violence for competence. And so what the way that Adam does it, he gets it all wrong. And my point is that women don't like men who are assholes. Alphas are not assholes. A woman who is angry at an alpha and calls him an asshole is wrong about him, most likely. What's likely happening is he's not kissing her ass. And, you know, he's not, like, submitting to her. He's not chasing her around. If I think if you have an alpha mentality, and then you're happy enough in your life with what you're doing and the goals that you're accomplishing, and that you like yourself enough that you take care of yourself, and then you have a lot of self-respect. And so as a consequence of that, you're naturally going to live healthier. You're going to care about your appearance. You're going to care about, you know, your goals. You're going to try to make achievements in life, but you're not doing it specifically because there are women waiting for you to do it. You're doing it because you want to do it, because you care about yourself enough. And you attract friends that way. You make them easily. And then, as a consequence of that, you attract women. It just comes natural. It's not about all this stuff that they say that it's about. And I honestly believe that people who think that are just angry betas that think that alphas are less moral than they are, you know? And I don't even want to use these terms as though they're sort of, let's say, deterministic, like you can't change, you know, like a once a beta, always a beta thing. I think that these things, if recognized, you can try to improve on, and you may find, you know, that you're doing better than you thought. So, I don't know if you follow what I'm saying, but I think that this is what I believe, that there's a misconception on what it means to be alpha. And I honestly believe that feminists' attack on toxic masculinity, or as they have rebranded it, I don't know if you know this, but they're rebranding toxic masculinity. They're not calling it that anymore. They're going to be calling it restrictive masculinity now. So be on the lookout for that buzzword, because it's just making the toxic masculinity label seem more appealing by saying it's restrictive, you know, like you're not allowed to be a man because of this. But I think that it's just their way of attacking toxic masculinity. And the fact is, toxic masculinity isn't real. They're just attacking masculinity in general. Or actually, caveat on that, toxic masculinity is real. There is such a thing as toxic masculinity. But do you know what that is? That's white knighting. White knighting is toxic masculinity. When women use men to do stuff for them, that's toxic masculinity. But that's not real masculinity, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is just, again, modern feminism kind of like merged with the kind of thoughts that came out of the critical theorists from the 50s, 60s, and beforehand. They started off in the 20s from the Frankfurt School, and then obviously migrated off to different parts of the States, where they managed to leisurely just promote their toxic ideology themselves, which serves nothing but other than to deconstruct and destroy Western institutions and values, and not replace it with anything else. And that's the whole point of it. It's to instill nihilism. It's to instill relativism, and it's to kind of promote these kind of civilization-ending people, which unfortunately has been the case. And I know a lot of people on the right blame the boomers for a lot of the ills suffered today, and they do deserve a lot of the blame.
Boomers gonna boom.
Boomers gonna boom. I mean, their memes are terrible. But it goes beyond that. It goes beyond that.
Yeah.
I think that also the boomers' parents, the silent generation, also should accept some of the blame as well. After, you know, having the baby boom in the post-war period, you kind of had the so-called war to end all wars. So there was a time of happiness and prosperity and hope and all that kind of stuff. So I think they kind of dropped their guard when they raised their kids a tiny bit, because obviously you had a cheap credit-fueled economic boom at the same time. So a lot of jobs were being created left, right, and center. Everyone's, from what we can see, the imagery looks pretty happy. So I think that they didn't raise their kids in such a good milieu, which left them weak or vulnerable to these kind of ideas that were just coming through the universities, such as radical feminism, critical theory, kind of like these gender studies and all that kind of stuff, which is coming through. And they kind of adopted these things because they didn't have anyone who was an adequate guide for them, or like an adequate parental figure for them. I think the war was so terrible, and still was in living memory, that they probably treated their kids a little better and tried sort of experimental forms of parental practices which weren't as strict. For those who don't know, I'm against spanking your kids. I'd much rather try to reason with them into behaving better or trying other ways in order to discipline them rather than resorting to spanking. Because I, like yourself, I was hit as well growing up as a kid, and
Yeah.
I did nothing but maybe foster a tiny bit of resentment towards the parent who was doing the hitting, which you can probably take a wild guess as to which one it was.
Really
But
activates. Almond's activated.
it's okay now. I've grown, she's grown, and we have a very good relationship today. But nevertheless, it could act as maybe a stumbling block towards fomenting a better relationship between child and parent. I think that it can help. It can definitely foster resentment towards one another, and it doesn't actually discipline the kid. But anyway, the point I wanted to make that the boomers aren't quite all to blame for how they became, and being very sort of indifferent to adding all these unpayable social policies, and which have kind of led to. I know that it's not just due to social policies and a lax immigration policy since the mid '60s, and also foreign policy has contributed a tremendous amount to especially the American national debt. So a lot of it's got to do with how we raise our kids, and we definitely need both a strong male and a strong female presence in the household. And we got to embrace our sexual dimorphism. We've got to embrace the fact that like trying to compare men and women in terms of ability and roles is like trying to compare apples and oranges. Yes, I believe that nobody should be treated differently, but at the same time, let's not lose our minds and just think that we're interchangeable, faceless economic units, which is absolutely batshit crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I wonder whether these things are actually crazy or if they're genuinely evil. I ask myself that a lot because no. Sometimes I think just saying these people are crazy is like, could I be giving them a pass though? Like, do they just see things differently and they just don't care? And I haven't made up my mind on that, but I think about it. I do. I think about it sometimes.
Well, I'd say that it's definitely a mixture of both. You have kind of like the academics and the intelligentsia, who I genuinely think are evil. I think it was George Orwell who said something like, "Nobody can." I'm paraphrasing, of course, but nobody can be as dumb as an academic. This kind of stuff they come out with is just, in light of a better word,
Yeah.
retarded. It really, really is. And then you kind of have these people who, the kind of the people who are very self-destructive. They do a lot of body modifications. They drink a lot. They consume a lot of drugs. And as you said earlier, is to kind of fill a void, but it's a void that you're going to need to keep filling over and over again, and it'll never be quite full because the effects of drugs or the euphoria after getting a piercing or a tattoo will eventually subside, and it's going to be in effect like chasing the existential dragon. So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of these people, what you're saying is their worldview has kind of been crafted to look at it in this kind of way, sort of to not only be social justice warriors, but social justice is their only existence because they've been probably raised in a daycare center. Just for argument's sake, they've been raised in a daycare center or an alternative family structure where biological father or biological mother isn't present. And while I do commend several step parents, the data's out there which suggests that the chances of you being abused by a step parent is just so much greater than by a biological parent, because obviously there's a genetic distance involved with a step parent, and when it comes to your own biological parent, they're obviously going to want to protect their own kin as much as possible. Barring maybe psychopathy or some really sort of maybe it's called psychological personality disorder or something, a personality disorder of some forms. Sorry, there's a antisocial personality disorder. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Or alcoholism, or drug abuse, or some form of sexual perversion. Barring one of those things, biological parents, you're going to assume will do the utmost best that they can for their child. So when it comes to one of these social justice warriors, I'm going to assume, or one of these, I'm not saying all progressives are crazy, but one of these kind of crazy progressives, I'm going to assume that they have come from an upbringing which is shielded from reality. They're probably from one of these coastal cities in America, or from London, or Berlin, or Paris, or somewhere like that. They have their group of friends who think like they do. They go to a high school, which is often brimming with leftist teachers. They go to a university, which is brimming with leftist teachers. The same political viewpoints are mirrored at home, or they have an apolitical household. So they're not challenged by any other viewpoint. These are the only acceptable viewpoints. And then you have these other people kind of moralizing to them, sermonizing to them in school or on the TV, telling you how evil the other side of the political spectrum is. And you're going to think the same way. You're going to literally think that these people are the unjust, these people are the evil ones, and you have the just cause in crusading against them. So I kind of empathize with them insofar that they haven't been exposed to any other viewpoints, and also the fact that they would have been sheltered to other arguments, which would have maybe hampered their cerebral development, which is why you see these people literally throwing apoplectic fits whenever somebody like Ben Shapiro or Dave Rubin comes to speak at a university campus.
Yeah, or when you elect a relatively moderate president.
Yeah, exactly. And I
Yeah.
think the recent problem has been this question of children being separated at the border when it comes to deportations.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really great points. I got another super chat here from, well, actually two of them from French Honey Badger. He says, for $5, thank you, and Capistan. He says, value is subjective, so it doesn't matter that you can't do anything with diamonds. They're more expensive because they represent status. This is true. They're more expensive because women say they're worth more. That's actually the reason. Men don't give a shit about diamonds unless they're going to use it for some kind of like, death ray or satellite or some kind of piece of high technology.
Or cutting
But
things,
but
yeah.
women say they like them. They are worth more. French Honey Badger gives us $5 again and says, ideas so stupid only intellectuals could think about them. Thomas Sowell. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
It's fine. Okay, so I've actually asked all the questions I wanted to ask. I noticed that you have a little YouTube channel too. What's next for what you're doing, or do you just like you're just doing this as like a hobby and you enjoy doing it and you're just gonna keep doing it, or do you have like some other things you want to do? Do you want to join UKIP just like Sargon, Paul Joseph Watson, and Count Dankula have, or?
Well, that'll be rather hard for me since I live in the wrong hemisphere. I live in
Oh,
Argentina, for those who don't know.
oh, okay. The accent kind of threw me a bit, but okay, all right.
No, I am British, but I'm just an expat.
Ah, I see, I see. Okay.
So it would be rather hard for me to join. I could probably get like a membership, but I'm a student at the moment, so I don't really exactly have the budget to have maybe a membership, and I don't really intend to go back to the UK. I'm thinking about moving to the States for at least a few years after I finish my master's degree out here.
Nice. Well,
So
if you I mean, not that I'm recommending it, but if you happen to be like, if you just decide to settle someplace near Chicago, let me know because I live there. I wouldn't say live in Chicago, but I know there's some safer like suburbs and that are less expensive. Um, you
I'd
know,
probably go to. I'm thinking about Atlanta or Florida at the moment because I'm
uh,
bilingual English and Spanish.
Oh,
So
okay, all right, cool. Well, we have a lot of Puerto Ricans here, but be careful because in Florida you have to deal with the Florida men. That's like
yes.
the running, yeah. So Florida man, there's a lot of that, but maybe Atlanta would be interesting. Probably get a lot of tail there with your accent. So since you're in Argentina, I've actually had a couple of MRAs that have been to Central and South American countries that have observed that the culture around sex and sexuality there is very different. Not that these places are completely free of feminism, but the places that some of these guys have been to, they experience different things. Like one guy, I think he told me he was in I can't remember which Central American country or Caribbean island it was. It might have been the Dominican Republic or something, but he said that they actually have a flirt culture where everyone flirts with other people, and it's everyone is so much more relaxed down there, and there's so much more like there isn't all this stress around like am I going to get accused of rape if I say hello to a woman or whatever. What's it like in Argentina? Have you observed anything like that or?
Well, I mean, I'm 28 next month. My party days are behind me, so I don't really go out that much anymore. I usually spend my time reading or just talking to friends through Skype. I'm going out this weekend, so
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
it's not as if I'm a complete recluse. But
Did you say
um,
you were turning 28?
28, yeah, next month.
28, and that means you're going to stop at 28. Holy shit.
No, I mean,
I'm
I hit it
45.
really hard in my
I
teens.
still go out.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hit it really hard in my late teens and early 20s and
Ah, I see.
kind of burnt out. So I can't really do it anymore. And I mean, from what I've noticed, there is a very strong feminist movement. Do you remember that really famous
Oh
video
yeah.
from last year of those naked, bare-breasted feminists in the street screaming like Planet of the Apes?
Yes, I do.
That was a couple of blocks away from my apartment.
Oh God. Okay, so you don't have it. You don't have it good. What about? Wait, was it? I don't think it was Argentina. What's the super famous photograph of the guy who pulled his wiener out in front of a bunch of like angry feminists, and he's like laying on his back, and it was in the South American country somewhere, I think. And he's like laying on his back,
Yeah.
smiling, and they're all just like yelling at him, and he just triggered like an entire army of angry vaginas. I don't know that I thought that was somewhere down there too, but that's a good yeah, that's a classic. Somebody's like, oh, that one LMAO, yeah, that's a classic. Well, anyway, so yeah, I'm sorry that to hear that your country has the feminism. So
Oh, but it's different though. I mean, um, I kind of lean more traditional these days when it comes to social issues. I'd much rather form a pair bonded relationship before, you know, starting something sexual with somebody.
yeah,
Obviously, back in the day, I was way more promiscuous, but now that I notice it, it just renders you unhappy and incomplete. It's definitely not something that I'd recommend people to pursue, but I have noticed that there is a distinct thought culture in South America.
yeah.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. I mean, you don't really have to, you don't really need to use that much effort into getting somebody's number and doing the deed thereafter. It's pretty easy.
Hmm.
But what I've noticed also that there's an extraordinarily high amount of women who see psychologists, who see the shrink, who are on antidepressants. So look, I'm obviously correlation doesn't equal causation, but I'm definitely saying that there's something there which would indicate to me that promiscuity doesn't render you happy.
Oh, there's lots of
And
yeah. There's data that supports it. The whole hookup culture thing results in a lot of very dissatisfied young people, and they don't because sex is no longer it loses its intimacy. It becomes about performance. It gets competitive. Strangely enough, people end up not feeling satisfied. They're not getting romance out of it. It's actually affecting people. It's just what the data shows. I'm not being a prude. This is what the data shows. So yeah, there are people that in hookup culture is not making people happier.
right, exactly. And the other thing I wanted to quickly address when it comes to feminism, Latin American culture is pretty machista, um, but I'm also very against violence towards women. I think that it's the utmost form of cowardice to strike a woman, and there is a lot of femicidio here. There's a lot of matricide in places like Well, there's matricide, that's mother killing. There's a lot of spousal murders in places like Argentina and Chile.
Wow.
It is. I reckon it is higher than places such as Western Europe or America, but it's probably not as high as somewhere like Russia, which is insane. But I think there is maybe a legitimate cause there to, kind of lower the amount of violence towards women in the household. But what I do want to quickly mention is the fact that in Western countries, at least, it seems as if 70% of domestic violence is initiated by women, which is something that a lot of people don't want to discuss. And also, there are social taboos against men being domestically abused by their wife, which is something that is not talked about very much. And obviously the male suicide rate was something that's always swept under the rug, and it's almost comedic just the way how whenever there's a slight uptick in female suicide rates, the media such as BuzzFeed or Vice or Vox will just immediately go after saying women's suicide rates on the rise, and just crickets about the male suicide rate.
Yeah, of course. And it's because of men that's happening, right? It's always men's fault too, and they're not killing themselves at all. So yeah. Well, actually, I think we've done well. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I think I'm good. I just want to thank you for having me on. I had a really good time. I think we had a very fruitful discussion.
I do. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good. Getting some Shiba on Shiba action was a good. It was a good idea. It turns out. And yeah, I want to thank you for coming on. So you guys can see all of Orwell and Goode's info. Oh, I got some super chats here. There, all of Orwell and Goode's info is here. So you should follow him on Twitter because he's constantly posting really interesting things. There's a meme that I really like. At least I think it's sort of become a meme. It's like a running joke that you have where it's like, you know, you'll type out those darn white people and then it'll be like shuffles cards. You know, and you pull a card out of and their motorcycles. And there'll be this article about how, you know, motorcycling is white supremacy or some shit. Hilarious, because it's everything. Everything is white men's fault, you know.
I think it was started by a Twitter account called Redheaded Libertarian. It's just caught on with a lot of people. I mean, there's so many articles. Like, what do you caption it as when they claim that something like the Isle of Man TT races are racist?
Yeah.
So what do you say to that?
Yeah, there is no end. This particular well does not have a bottom. That's basically what I say to that. Okay, so French Honey Badger and Capistan gives us another $5 and says, the number of murders in South America are enormous regardless of gender. The feminism is not the answer, and femicide is feminist propaganda. All right, so actually Rags can come on. I would have all three of them on, and we'll have a Doge three-way. That's fine by me.
I'd be very happy to do that.
I think that could be a lot of fun. There's also another Twitter user named Shiba in Beige or Beige Shiba that I also follow, and yeah, he's also pretty funny, and mostly I think deals with Gamergate stuff. So anyway, one last thing before we take off is Allison has started, or should soon be starting, the fundraiser to get us to the ICMI in London. So be sure to check that out. It should be at feedthebadger.com. Help us get to London. There's going to be a lot of really great guests there, and we're going to try and get interviews with them. I was just looking at the list of people. It should be very interesting. I'm also hoping that Sargon visits us if he's in London at the time, as well as Dave Cullen, who I've been keeping up with, and I talked to him, and I think he's a really, 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 really great guy. And I'm hoping I can see him when we're up there. And who knows who else? Last time we went up there, I got to hang out with Goodfella and Mim Headroom and Charming Man, and so maybe I'll see those guys again. I hope so. Maybe Count Dankula. So that, yeah, all of it sounds like a good time. So go to feedthebadger.com and see if you can throw a few shekels into the hat and help us get to the ICMI. And in closing, I'm just going to say thank you, Orwell and Goode, for taking the time to come on the show. I hope that things are going well in Argentina. Is it winter there? Because you're like south of the equator? I'm not sure how that works. Because in Australia, it's winter, right?
Yeah, it's winter at the moment, but thankfully we've had a very sunny winter so far. But it's been cold, but thankfully sunny.
Oh, wow, that's so weird. Actually, it's fucking hot as balls here today. Hot as, well, more accurately, hot as ball. Because I am a testicular cancer. I have that, so I'm actually one down. But yeah, it's hot as ball up here. It's pretty messed up. I'm glad you're having a mild winter, so that's nice. I can't wait for it to cool off. The heat wave is supposed to end tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, with that all said, I want to thank you guys for joining us on this week's Fireside Chat. And be sure to like, favorite, share, and subscribe to Honey Badger Radio. And we will see you guys tomorrow with the next